Hope you got supply of water and all next to you.
Here, something happens to my laptop connection, I log in using my phone now.
Yeah, I have actually logged in with both. I'm already there with both.
I've kept the other one ready. So in case I get logged out for some reason, I can use it to log in.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we start?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yes. Okay. It's indeed a pleasure to have both of you, Professor Rishikesh Krishnan and Mr. Hitesh Oberoi. It's such a pleasure to just for the audience to introduce. Let me introduce Professor Rishikesh Krishnan. Professor Rishikesh Krishnan is Director Designate for IIM Bangalore, and he should be taking over soon in another 6 weeks' time, I suppose. And he was a professor at IIM Bangalore before he took over as Director IIM Indore, and served a very distinguished period there. And in fact, quite a few things that happened in an IIM that never happened before. Undergraduate program for management started off 5-year undergraduate program, and it's a trendsetter, and many more IIMs, including I think Ahmedabad, and they're all thinking about introducing some of the other IIMs, new IIMs already introduced. And Professor Rishikesh Krishnan, his areas of interest include innovation and strategy. He is an alumnus of IIT Kanpur, IIM Ahmedabad, and Stanford. Welcome, Professor Rishikesh Krishnan. Let me introduce Hitesh. Hitesh has been a friend for almost 25 years. We were together at IIM Bangalore, the class of 1996, as they call at the business school. I always have known him in the campus. Always used to be in the top 3, always fighting for position in the top 3. And he never needed to fight, actually. He walked through, and I used to be at the bottom 3. And now he's been a successful entrepreneur, and the byword for anybody looking for jobs is Naukri, and he has been at the helm of affairs for almost 2 decades now, along with all other companies in the InfoEdge bouquet. So welcome, Hitesh. It's a pleasure having you here. It's very interesting that it's a coincidence, though, but all from IIM Bangalore, though Rishi has got connections with IIM Ahmedabad and Stanford too, but will be at the helm of affairs at IIM Bangalore. It's a pleasure, and I'm going to look forward to next 1.5 hours of exciting interactions. So the way I'm just thinking is the initial, as opening remarks, we say, so I always tell when I look at youngsters, when I interact with youngsters, I keep telling them that it's very important to know yourself first. Awareness of self is the most important. What you really love doing and what are you good at, and then map it on to the industry sectors and look at those sectors 5 years, 10 years perspective before you actually plan at how do you go about. So from that perspective, I would like to start by asking, I'll first go with Professor Rishikesh Krishnan here. Professor Rishi, if you're looking at, because most of them are youngsters here, maybe in the age group of between I see most of them are between 22 to 32, 35. That is the age group predominantly. And many 60 to 70% of them are aspirants who have got calls and want to get into business schools. And significant chunk, about 20, 30%, are also people who are in business schools, are just graduated in business schools, and few of them are other side of 30 who have been in the corporate sector for a few years. That's the broad number, the broad spectrum of people here. So looking at this crowd, I would like both of you to address. First, I'm throwing it at you, Professor Rishi. While we go ahead, I also have one gentleman who is going to help me, is ARKS, ARKS Srinivas, in case my technology gives up, then I've told ARKS that he will continue from wherever I move. So that the Sutradhar changes, but the session goes on. ARKS is an IIM Kolkata alumnus and entrepreneur of distinguished entrepreneur for here. ARKS is here for more than 2 decades, and he heads our business education vertical across the country. ARKS, thanks for being there.
Yeah, I'm here as a backup if required. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome to both Hitesh and Professor Rishi. Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Rishi, could you just look at next 5 years, 10 years perspective and share what are the things that you see as a major factors perhaps that will shape the world as such, world economy and the corporate world? I think that could be a starting point to help the youngsters think a little bit in the longer term perspective. Over to you, Rishi.
Yeah, so I think what we have seen in India and perhaps in the rest of the world was about 20 to 30 years of globalization-driven growth. There was one dip perhaps around the 2007-8 financial crisis. And of course, in the last year or two, there's been maybe again a slight dip before COVID started. But essentially, over the last 2 to 3 decades, we saw globalization-driven growth, which added a lot to the Indian economy, both in terms of corporate growth, as well as concomitant opportunities for jobs. So during this period, we saw lots of our young friends get jobs in, for example, the services sector, a lot of top multinationals, many Indian companies like Hitesh's company as well in online and digital businesses. And it's been a period of pretty reasonably smooth growth, I would say, in the last 2 to 3 decades. However, at this point of time, the situation going forward looks a little different. The first reason it looks different is that a lot of the global framework that we saw getting developed over the last few decades seems to be coming apart, or at least beginning to fray. Essentially, the whole growth in this period was driven by a lot of shift of different economic activities to the developing world, particularly to China, but also to India. And the recent frictions between the US and China indicate that that may not continue in quite the same way. While this does make opportunities for countries like India, particularly if investments move out of China, there is no guarantee at this point of time that those investments will necessarily come, because India does have competitors. There are countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, Indonesia, several countries which are vying for the same investment. So the first major factor I see is that there's going to be some change in the way global business and trade is organized. That may have opportunities for us, but it may also have lots of dislocations and ups and downs in the years ahead. The second important factor is, of course, COVID itself. We can clearly see that there is going to be a recession in India after initially denying it Now the government is also admitting that we're probably going to see about negative 10% this financial year. And it's going to take time for the country and the world as well to emerge from this. Many of the developed countries will also be going through a serious recession, and we can expect fairly rocky times during the next couple of years. For all practical purposes, it looks as though this particular financial year, 2021, is going to be a washout. We might see some better news in 21, 22, but essentially next couple of years are going to be tough. So I think that's the second important development which is going to impact students and jobs and so on. The last point I would mention is, of course, there's also a little bit of good news in the sense that the government has sort of realized that these changes are happening. And we've seen the recent 5-phase announcement by the finance minister of a whole range of policy initiatives to put India on a better footing. These are all under this Atmanirbharta banner, and they involve reforms across a whole range of sectors. It's early days right now to say how those reforms will play out, but at least it does give us some optimism that the government is thinking about these issues seriously, and hopefully this focus on creating a more strong and result in opportunities for people across the board. So I'll stop here for the moment. Srini, you're muted.
Srini, you're on mute. Srini, you're on mute.
Yeah, that's a quick 3-minute 3 pointers. I just before I come to Hitesh, I just want to tell all the viewers on YouTube that we are live and kicking. Kindly keep pumping your questions for people here too, and also on YouTube. Keep sending questions here. This is not a recorded session; it's a live session. So kindly send your questions there. We will definitely take it up as we go along. Yeah, Hitesh, the same question to you. Because you've been there and seen last 20-25 years, couple of ups and downs in the economy, 2008 and so on and so forth. So what do you see if you look at 5 years, 10 years perspective, what do you see factors shaping up the world economy, Indian economy, industry, jobs, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so I am totally in agreement with Professor Rishikesh Krishnan, but I'm also a big believer in black swan events. So 1990-91 was a big sort of black swan event in the history of India, economic history of India at least, and India opened itself to the world, and we saw massive growth as a result of that for the next 10 years. So many companies entered India, so many jobs were created. India became a part of the global sort of economy, so to speak. And then I remember in 1999 when there was this whole sort of thing around Y2K. So IT companies had set up shops. So we had our Infosys and Wipros and TCSs of the world till then, but they were small. And thanks to Y2K, there was a sort of surge in demand for Indian tech talent. And as a result of that, many of these companies became very, very big overnight, and a lot of work started getting offshored to India. So till then, there was a little bit of body shopping, but after that, offshoring also took off in a big way, and millions of jobs were created in India. And a lot of the sort of development we see in India is thanks to the fact that the IT industry happened. And because the IT industry was happening, thousands of engineering colleges came up. Many things sort of came up to support what was already happening. So that was another big event in the economic sort of history of India, or at least of corporate India. And 20 years ago, like there was nobody used to talk about the internet. I mean, when I went to IIM Bangalore in 1994 and I passed out in 1996, we had access to the internet, but it was very limited, and it was not a very, very friendly internet to use. When I was graduating from IIT in 1994, again, we had access to email, a little bit of internet here and there, but nobody expected the internet to become so large. And when we set up shop we raised money in 2000 as Naukri naukri.com, there were just 2 million people on the internet in India, and there were no mobile phones. And uh, an incoming mobile call used to cost 16 rupees a minute, and similarly, an outgoing call used to cost 16 rupees a minute. And there was no concept of smartphones. And fast forward, 10 years, even 10 years ago, there were no smartphones. So Apple and they were just sort of happening, and there were very few people with access to the mobile internet. And look at where we are today. There are, in India alone, there are close to 500 million people on smartphones and on the internet. In a few years, maybe the number will go to a billion, right? Globally, maybe 5, 6 billion, 7 billion people will have access to the internet and on their phones in the next 5 or so years. So a lot can change in 5 or 10 years. Like 2008, we had the global financial crisis. Now we have a pandemic in front of us. But what I've seen is that every time some of these disruptions happen, and whether they are technology based or non-technology oriented, it also creates a lot of opportunities. So, existing sort of businesses, existing setups get disrupted. Like as we can see today, travel is getting disrupted. Airlines are going out of business. Hotels have a big problem. Restaurants are suffering. But in the same way, I mean, a lot of new opportunities are being created and will be created going forward. Uh, and even in the world of technology and the startup world where I come from, there are lots of new interesting technologies which are still WIP or work in process. For example, artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing, gene technology, and personalized medicine. So there are a bunch driverless cars. So there are 8 or 10 sort of very, very interesting sort of opportunities or technologies which are developing and maturing as we speak. And it's only a matter of time before something becomes very large and ends up creating lots of opportunities. So that could lead to another disruption in the way we work, right? Like what is happening around us today is creating opportunities like work from home, which could create a big disruption in the days and to come. So I'm still very hopeful and optimistic that thanks to the advances taking place, especially in the technology world, we will see a lot of businesses getting disrupted and a lot of opportunity to create new businesses, to create new jobs, create new wealth in the times to come. Now, what exactly how this will play out, it's very hard to say, right? Because like I said, nobody could have predicted smartphones 10 years ago. Nobody could have predicted 20 years ago the internet would become so big. Nobody could have predicted a pandemic, 10 years ago. But what is certain is that something or the other will happen every now and then, and will create a lot of opportunities. And we have to be ready when that happens to sort of plunge into what's happening and take our chances and make the best out of it.
Okay, thank you, Hitesh. That's the disruptive, touched upon disruptive technologies that are going to shape the world. While Rishi was talking about the geopolitical side of it, another thing that this is when I spoke to Rishi, and Rishi also commented on this. But another thing that I felt could be because I always felt that with natural resources depleting, sustainability gaining greater momentum, environmental issues coming to fore, and COVID really hitting hard. Because I always felt that apart from the technology disruption, the environmental disruption or the technologies that would take care of these could also be a factor. Could you just comment quickly on this factor? So then there was those three big players we will perhaps will know where to place. Rishi, could you just comment on the global environmental scenario, sustainability, and how significant will this be?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that sustainability is an important issue, and the recent events have, if anything, only amplified the importance of sustainability. However, I am not as optimistic that we are going to see sufficient action in that direction. The reason for that is quite simple. First of all, in India, we tend to be more obsessed with just creating growth and jobs. And as a result, we tend to look at some of the short-term parameters a little more closely. A lot of the environmental concerns require more long-term sort of decision making. We have done it in a few sectors, like maybe in renewable energy, but in other sectors, I'm not very sure we have done that as carefully. Globally, also, I must confess that I'm quite disappointed by the leadership shown by some countries, particularly the United States. Under President Obama, there were a lot of steps the US took to focus on different elements of sustainability, but many of those have been dismantled by the present administration. In many ways, the US tends to be the leader in many of these areas. And given that the US has sort of backed away from leadership positions in that, it remains to be seen how the rest of the world responds. Europe, of course, is quite responsible in many of these areas, but Europe is going to have problems of its own, centered again around recession and growth and so on. So I think there's certainly a wake-up call for all of us in what's happened now. And while there might be a few things that help, for example, maybe more working from home, less use of vehicles, therefore less pollution, less oil consumption, and so on, I'm afraid I'm not that optimistic at this point of time that we are going to see a really significant push on sustainability.
Thank you. Hitesh, any comment on this dimension?
No, I agree. I think the world needs to collaborate a lot more if it has to solve, problems like sustainability and climate change. These are, of course, this problem has been around for a long time, and it's very clear as to what it will take to solve this problem. We've had a lockdown for a few weeks, and look at how much difference it has made to the environment around us. I mean, I'm in Noida, which is very close to Delhi, and this is where the river Yamuna flows. And it used to be like a sewer till some time back. And today there are, I haven't seen it personally, but there are pictures floating all over the internet of how clean the water in the Yamuna has become over the last few days. So the solution answers are also very clear, but for some reason, governments are not able to make it happen. And worldwide also, we are not seeing much collaboration taking place on this front. Technology, can it help us here? Maybe yes. I mean, clean tech is an area where we're making a lot of progress. The cost of solar power, for example, is falling with every passing year. Even without subsidies, now I'm told solar power is very, very competitive. India as a country has a lot of potential in that area. We have been dependent on oil and coal and fossil fuels for a very long time. If we can sort of get over that piece, and if the government can create sort of the right sort of incentives for businesses to move to solar power, then maybe the problem can be solved to some extent. But this is not something which is going to go away in a hurry. India is a growing country. We want economic growth. Population is growing, and there are trade-offs which will have to be made at some point in time. I mean, the pollution in Delhi has been crazy for the last couple of years, that we all know, and we all know how it's impacting our health. So I think we need to find a new way maybe of measuring our progress, because right now we are too focused on GDP growth, and that sort of leads to its own challenges.
Yeah, when I was reading the investments that is being made predominantly, for example, Bill Gates, I believe, makes most of the investments in the three areas. That is, one is energy, second is biotechnology, and third is artificial intelligence. These are the three areas. So I thought, because looking into next 5 years, 7, 8 years, perhaps these are the areas that could be of great value. Of course, AI takes its roots everywhere because it's application centric. But if you look at biotechnology and energy are the big sectors of focus. Okay, so now coming to the immediate thing that we are looking at, the way thing that is bothering most of us is COVID. And while Rishi spoke about the geopolitical scenario, the way things are pre-COVID and post-COVID, during COVID, things are happening worldwide. It is some other kind of geopolitical thing that has happened in India, aftermath of lockdown. And I think this will have a great impact on Indian economy, looking at next 2, 3, 4 years, the way mass migrations happen, people on the streets, deserting companies and organizations, and CEOs are asking the governments to quickly do something for the workforce and so on and so forth. So, Rishi, how do you see this whole thing panning out in the next 2 years and its impact on the industry and job scenarios, economy and job scenarios? How do you see this? Over to you.
Yeah, I think this is it's a very important question, because what we have seen in the last few weeks just reminds us of something that I guess we knew implicitly, but has been sort of out in the open. That is, the Indian economy depends on a whole lot of people who are moving from the relatively less developed parts of the country to the places where a lot of the industrial activity and economic activity is happening. So states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra to some degree, Kerala have been the sort of magnets for a lot of that movement. And some of the states like UP, Bihar, MP, etc. have been the sources of much of that people. So I think there's definitely going to be some challenge ahead on this dimension, at least in the short term, with companies also opening up now after the sort of removal of some of the lockdown restrictions. Many of them are finding that there is a shortage of labor. We're seeing lots of reports on that in the media, and companies are beginning to think seriously whether they need to relocate. Do they need to change their manufacturing models? How should they really go about addressing these issues? It's not very clear. I mean, there are conflicting views on whether the people who went back to their homes are going to return to the cities in a hurry, or whether they're going to wait it out for some time. But I think it's fair to say they're not going to come back immediately, given what's happened. They might come back in a few months once they feel the need to work and earn. But I think, having just experienced what they have in the last couple of months, it's quite likely that they won't return in a great hurry. So this is going to have an additional impact on the recovery of the economy. So even though the lockdown restrictions have been removed now, many companies are struggling to get back on their feet. Maybe Hitesh should be able to tell us a little more about what is his experience in this domain.
Yeah, Hitesh, what kind of industries? Because you have labor intensive, then from other end, technology intensive, and what do you see? Because when you look at the trends and you look at, so what do you foresee in the immediate next 6 to 8 months to 1 year? How is it going to impact the industries and students who are graduating now or who are in the first year getting into second year? So there are a lot of questions that they have. How do you see this thing opening up, panning out?
Yeah, it's again very hard to say how this is going to play out, because a lot will depend on what happens on the COVID front. So if we get a vaccine in the next 3, 4, 6 months, 8 months, then of course it could play out very differently. But in the short term, it does look like that it's going to get worse before it gets better. So both on the COVID front, the number of cases in India, as India opens up after the lockdown, is only going to grow. And wherever social distancing is hard in places like, for example, Bombay, for example, the number of cases could just, go through the roof if we are not careful, and if we don't wear masks, and if we don't sort of maintain social distance. COVID, but maybe, 3 or 4 months from now, the situation will peak and we'll start, the flattening the curve and so on and so forth. But in the short term, it does look like on the health front, the situation is not going to get any better. On the economic front, of course, lockdown resulted in everything going to almost zero. Most businesses were down, depending on the industry you were in, between 30 to 95%, right? So we have a Naukri Jobs Peak Index, which we've been tracking for the last 12 years. And we have data by function, by industry, by geography. So the month of April, we saw a 62% decline in that index over the same time last year. And sectors like, for example, auto and retailing and travel and hospitality, etc., from where they were a year ago. Certain sectors were less impacted. For example, the IT companies were less impacted. I mean, they were down maybe 30%. Healthcare companies were less impacted. Pharma companies were less impacted. But, overall, we were down 60-65% from where we were last year. And May could be worse because, people were expecting the lockdown to open, but it was extended. So maybe equally bad, if not worse. So 2 months of the year are gone. We've lost these 2 months. Now, of course, the economy started opening up a little bit. And if we, and touch wood, I hope we don't have a second or another lockdown. And some parts, of course, still to open. But we will see a gradual recovery from here. It's unlikely to be a V-shaped recovery. It's because of various reasons, which Professor also spelled out. If there is going to be a shortage of workers, there is going to be a problem. Companies that find it difficult to go back to normal. Demand has anyway been hit. People are being very, very careful. In places like Delhi and Bombay, people don't know whether they should be allowing servants and drivers into their homes. There is all kinds of confusion around what to do, what not to do, and this is going to be there for some time. So my sense is that it will be a slow recovery from here. If nationally we were down 60-70% till month of May, maybe we'll be down 40%, 45% in June, and then slowly things will start getting better unless they worsen a lot on the COVID front. So it'll be a while before things get back to normal, and the new normal, who knows, maybe 90% of all what the earlier economy was like. We don't know where it's going to stabilize and how much time it'll take to get the workers back, and how much time will it take for people to, there's a lot of fear amongst people today also, right? People don't want to go out and spend. They don't want to sort of take chances. They don't know whether they'll have their job 6 months from now, 3 months from now, 9 months from now. So they're holding back. So demand has taken a beating, supply has been disrupted. Slowly these things will start returning to normal. Could be 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, difficult to say. If we have a vaccine, they might recover very fast. But it doesn't look like we'll have a vaccine in 3 or 4 months, maybe another year before we get a vaccine.
I want to,
yeah.
I just want to ask you a very pertinent thing here, especially if you look at the Indian economy. The last 7-8 years has been driven a lot by the entrepreneurial dimension that emerged. The startups, many of them went on to become unicorns and whatnot. Most of the traditional companies left behind, and the unicorns went on to make big killing. And the COVID has hit really hard. So, because this segment, if you look at the IIMs and business schools, the numbers jumped from 200, 250 intakes to 450, 500 intakes. And a lot of people gravitated towards startups. So when you look at this kind of scenario, I know the students almost be wondering that most of the things we have discussed so far is a lot to do with the negative impact, but we'll come to a lot of more things. Students, friends, kindly wait, a lot more things to come up, because I want to set up to really understand, and then we take off, because there are a lot more things coming up from both of them. Yeah, Hitesh, over to you. How do you see this COVID and startup culture and the new age economy and this part of it? Because that is very, very important cog there in the bigger wheel.
Yeah, so I think we must differentiate between startups and unicorns, because maybe there were 10 or 15, or there are 10 or 15 unicorns in India, companies which were very, very well funded, and companies which were losing a lot of money and grew very quickly. So, many of them, we've all been reading, have been laying off people and are cutting expenses and to stay in business. And that's been the case not just in India, but globally as well. Uber has laid off people, Airbnb has laid off people, and you're seeing the same in India. But the startup sort of world is not going anywhere, because like I said, with in every crisis, there are opportunities. And I'm sure what entrepreneurs do best, as we all know, is spot these opportunities and make them happen, right? And so there will be a lot of entrepreneurial activity still, and a lot of new companies will get funded for sure, right? So there are lots of people there who will cut small checks, who will angel fund companies, seed fund companies. Companies that are small today will get bigger checks if they're not burning money, if they have a viable business model. Yes, you may see a correction in valuations. You may see a correction in in what we are already seeing in the unicorn world, but that's a handful of companies. The startup world is not going anywhere. If anything, you will see more and more sort of companies setting up shop for the reason I mentioned, because there are more opportunities to disrupt. If established companies go out of business, for example, a lot of companies which are losing a lot of money, for example, not just the startup, but also established companies. A lot of companies are in debt. If they go bankrupt or if they go out of business, it'll create a vacuum, and and it'll be an opportunity for new entrepreneurs to set up shop and make something out of it. So I don't see entrepreneurial activity stopping. I don't see startup activity coming to a halt. There could be a period of 3 or 4 months, while people figure things out. But I'm sure investment will come back into startups, will come back with a bang. Unicorns is a different world altogether, because they're no longer startups. Actually, they're large established companies with thousands of employees, millions of customers. There, what you're seeing is a correction, because they were sort of very, very aggressive in the market, and they were planning for an economy which was going to continue to grow for at 5-6% at least for the next few years. And here we are in a situation where the economy is going to be 90% of maybe what it was last year. So they are course correcting, and they will course correct. And once they have course corrected, growth will come back into these companies as well. But they will go through a period of turmoil, which we are already seeing. But if you fast forward 6 months from now, 1 year from now, it could be a very different world. It could be a world where because of this suppressed demand, and because of people are sort of stymied in, they're not able to get out. Once things start to normalize on the COVID front, it is very, very possible that demand will come back with a bang. It is very possible that India may grow rapidly, because if this year it's going to be minus, let's say 5%, there could be a bounce back next year once the COVID situation normalizes, and that is bound to create lots of job opportunities for people who will graduate then, right? Now, of course, the people who graduated this year it's going to be tough. I mean, like it was in 2000, for people who graduated in 2008, like it was for people who graduated in 2000, 2001. But by the time, I think, in a year from now, I'm sure we'll be in a much better place, and there'll be lots of opportunities for everybody.
Rishi, connected to this, because the questions that are coming up is, as Hitesh was pointing out, the students who passed out or graduated this year or in the first year going to second year, it must have been a challenge. But how if you have to put some numbers, are there any withdrawals in terms of offers or any such thing that have happened in terms of placements or in terms of the summer internships at IIM Bangalore, or because you must be interacting with almost the entire IIM fraternity? Would you like to comment on this? Because that would be a matter of concern for most of the youngsters.
Yeah, so at IIM Bangalore, so far we have not seen any major impact of COVID on PGP 2018-2020 placement. I think less than 10 offers have been withdrawn out of a graduating class of 420, 430. So that's negligible number of offers, 2%, 1 or 2%. There have been some deferments of joining dates. That's natural. You don't expect companies to onboard people at a time when there's a lockdown. So a lot of companies have deferred the joining dates, which were originally like 1st May or 1st June or something like that. But whatever data I have, and I actually got it updated today, there has been no significant negative impact on the graduating class of this year. As far as summer internship is concerned, again, there were some withdrawal of offers. Mainly those were overseas summer internships. Most domestic companies adapted to the situation quite well. They converted a lot of their internships into virtual or work from home kind of internships. It's obviously not exactly the same thing as working in the company, but companies have been quite supportive in making those work. So we didn't see any significant impact on summer internships either at IIMB. As far as other institutes are concerned, I think there has been some impact, but it varies from institute to institute. I think the top end, ABC, we've generally not seen too much impact. Perhaps in those companies where the sophistication of management is not that high, where they were not able to quickly adapt or change their internships into work from home kind of projects. There were internships lost, and I've seen even on the internet students asking to find new internship opportunities. But I think by and large it's been manageable so far this year. So that's been our experience so far. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It's the last two answers from Hitesh and Rishi. I think it added to positivity. Continuing to the discussion, Hitesh, it's very interesting, as you rightly said. The new opportunities are emerging, and if work from home is going to be some new normal, that's going to happen. At least multinationals and Indian companies too have told that up to 70% of people will work from home, and so on and so forth. So though they looks like the geopolitical scenarios, the corporates or the nations are closing up, but perhaps this opening up greater opportunities, because whether you are sitting at home and working for company in Delhi or Bangalore or London doesn't make any difference. Would you like to comment on this new emerging scenario, Hitesh? New opportunities emerging even in this adversity. Hitesh, your mic, unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah. Yeah, so, little early for me to comment on how things could change, because see, it takes time to build habits, and if this crisis is over before we know it, then people will go back to working as if nothing happened. But yes, if it continues for some time, and like in our company, we, about 2 months ago, we transitioned of almost 4,500 employees to working from home. And so far, it's been working, seamlessly for us. At least many people in our company are claiming to be more productive than they were when they were in office, right? And let me give you an example of the kind of opportunities it could throw up. So, for example, for the longest time, it's not easy to get product and tech and data science talent in our industry. And we are a company based out of Noida. A lot of talented people in this area are found in places like Bangalore, because Bangalore is a big sort of IT hub. And for the longest time, we've thought about opening a center in Bangalore, but never sort of got around to doing it. But now to us, it looks like it's very easy to actually work with people if they're working from home. And therefore, we had this mental block that, we will not be able to run something in Bangalore sitting out of Delhi. Who will how will we figure things out? How will we sort of engage those people if they're not in the same location? It doesn't work, and so on and so forth. But now actually we've gotten over that block in our head. So we will be more than happy to acquire and hire people, talent, and acquire and hire people in Bangalore, for example. And why just Bangalore, and why just tech talent? Because if we need to hire call center people, for example, today we hire them in Delhi, make them commute 20 kilometers or 30 kilometers one way to come to office. Today we have the networks, the security, sort of everything, the digital infrastructure required, which isn't already in place. And therefore we can hire people even in small towns, right? It's not difficult to onboard them and to make them productive. And for all maybe it's easier to retain them as well, because it's not so easy to retain people in a city like Delhi in functions like these. Attrition rates, for example, in the call center function is very high in most companies. And this is therefore not just at the top in tech, but also in functions like call center, in sales. A salesperson today, many clients may not be willing to meet people face to face. Going forward, they may say, listen, we are happy to sort of meet you on Zoom. So then your sales guys don't have to be based in the city where the clients are based, right? So things could change dramatically going forward if this becomes a new normal. And the same thing then applies to countries, right? So people in the companies in the US today, they outsource a lot of work to IT services companies who have these big offices where the people go and sit. Tomorrow it may become very, very easy for somebody sitting in, to be employed by a Google, and the person could be working from home out of India. Because there's a time difference, all these things also need to be taken care of, but still it becomes possible. And again, not just in tech and engineering, but in every function. So this could sort of change a lot of things. And something else also which we've been thinking about, which could change, and this may not be relevant to IIM graduates, but for jobs which require you to come to work, there are certain jobs where you need to be at work no matter what. hiring could become more local, actually, even more local, because if this COVID threat or COVID issue continues for a long time, people may not want to commute for long distances to get to work. They may want to stay close to work. So that could also result in a lot of things changing. For example, I'll give you a simple example. In my house, I have a Mali or a gardener who sort of comes from Delhi. And the poor guy has not been able to make it from Delhi for the last 8 weeks to Noida because the border is shut. And he must be also wondering whether he should get more clients in Delhi, or whether it makes sense for him to commute to Noida. And at the same time, I need to sort of maintain my garden, and therefore I've been hiring local gardeners in Noida, to sort of do the work for me. So I'm paying both, but this could change over time. Both the job seeker and the employer may start thinking differently over time. So there could be many things which which could change if this COVID sort of issue continues for a long time. On the other hand, if, like I said, if things go back to normal quickly, then human beings are social animals. They have a short memory, and things will sort of become the same very quickly, as if nothing happened.
Now that we have looked at the scenarios, though they're in the short term, there could be some setbacks in terms of economy and so on and so forth, but there are green shoots too. There are new shoots also coming up and new possibilities too emerging. So I'll just move towards friends, all those people who are on YouTube and here too, kindly hold on. I'm just coming to your immediate concerns, few questions I've already asked. I'm just moving towards closer in terms of COVID. COVID, not only it has hit industry hard, but it also has hit the education sector, education systems and institutions really hard. The Oxford University says that the entire academic year they will be doing online, and most of the US universities are saying that we will not open for the fall semester, only for the spring semester. And most of you are waiting for IIMs and most of you are wondering that when will the IIMs release the admission list and so on. So they've already released this month. So I'm just asking Rishi to little bit talk about this shift that has happened and how it is hitting generally higher education overall, and how IIMs, especially IIM Bangalore being at the forefront of the higher education and management education, how is it hard, and what is it that institution like IIM Bangalore is looking forward to in the next 2, 3, 4 months? In what way it is going to be affecting the students? Over to you, Rishi.
So we were fortunate that the academic year 2019-20 was completed by the time class of MBA students as well as the first year students had finished their academic courses for this year. So we didn't have to shift them online. But we have other programs. For example, we have a weekend MBA program. Those programs follow a different calendar. So they're already running now on online classes. And clearly, that will be the way to go if the lockdown continues. We are planning to, of course, start our PGP2, that is the second year of the MBA classes in July. And those will, at least by present indications, most likely those will be online. But of course, we would like to get students back on campus as soon as conditions permit. So we would be looking for safety on a number of fronts, obviously primarily on health safety and making sure that there is no significant risk which we are exposing the students to. So we are hoping, of course, that that point will come fairly soon. But in the absence of that, we will, of course, be using technology to connect with our students. We've already taken several steps in the direction. We've been putting our faculty through training on how to use some of these online platforms. Faculty members have been revising their course outlines to make them more amenable to be taught online. They've been looking at what's the best way of using the medium. Should they be doing case studies? Should they be using simulations? Do they need to change the sequence of topics? I mean, they've been asking just lots of questions around what they teach, so that by the time the new students come in, or even the second year of MBA starts, we will be fairly well prepared to do things online. Of course, online has both pluses and minuses. Simply from a content perspective, it's great. But on the other hand, we also recognize that a lot of learning happens outside the classroom. It happens between the students themselves. It happens in the hostel. It happens, in the cafeteria, in many other sort of settings. And that's a very important part of the MBA experience. So while we are quite positive and confident about shifting the pure content part of the program online, we're not very clear about how we can substitute the experiential elements. We're exploring whether we can do that as well. I mean, we're trying to see how can we use online platforms to do some of the social connections that are important. But I suspect that will always be a poor substitute to people actually meeting face to face and spending time together. But yeah, but I think just to summarize, we are all set for online classes for as long as it is required. But we're always hopeful that as soon as the government gives the green signal, and as soon as the conditions regarding COVID are favorable, we would of course like to bring students back on campus.
What I hear you saying is usually the second year students come in the third or fourth week of June, but they are going to come in end of July now. So almost a 1 month deferment. And the first year students, when are you expecting them to be on board?
Yeah, so our current plan is that first year students will start in the beginning of August, which again is of course a delay. The second year students, by the way, we are not looking at end of July. We are looking at, I think, second week of July is when we are looking at, which is again about a month late. So you got the delay part of it correct. So second year students, we are looking at in the second week of July, and first year students, we are looking in the beginning of August.
One saving grace is the whole world is going through the same turmoil. So, unlike, so that everybody understands. Because otherwise, because I used to say that it is very stringent in terms of starting second week of June, 10 weeks, then a break, and fatafat, the way things would go. I'm sure that a lot of things could, as we go on the fly, will change.
Yeah, so I mean, you're absolutely right. Our academic calendar now is pretty adaptable and agile. We've already had to change it and sort of update it a few times, but we are prepared for any future changes as well.
I would like to actually, because these are students here who have this concern of online education. I must tell you that last almost 6-7 weeks, I've been anchoring a program for class 12 students online. Teachers, about 6-7 teachers together teach students, 60,000 students at one go. And amazing thing is the engagement is so high. And most of the students who usually don't participate in a face-to-face classroom are participating more online. It's very interesting. And students feel that it is more engaging because technology gives so much more power that usually a classroom does not give. So it has got a very positive things too. Hitesh, do you want to comment anything quick on this dimension of technology-enabled education and its impact and this kind of a thing, especially at a management education stage?
No, like Professor Rishikesh said, there are pluses and minuses of online. So for a online education is is great at taking if you want to take quality education to the masses. So you get scale, you get affordability if you do that, and and it's going to disrupt a lot of institutes out there, education institutes out there who don't offer quality education today. So I think it's a warning. It's that we can see what's coming. Because if IIM Bangalore can stream its courses, and all its courses and all its classes and make them open to everybody, for example, a lot of MBA colleges could be in trouble going forward. At the same time, there is a campus experience, and for people like me who've been to campus, I mean, nothing beats that. There are many elements to learning. Technical knowledge or what is taught inside the classroom is just one of them, and there is this whole element of personal growth and life skills which you acquire, the friendships you build on campus, the networks you sort of build, which hold you in good stead and come in very useful later in life. I think many of these things are often underappreciated and underestimated. Uh, so this part of the experience is hard to sort of offer online, and you can't have parties online, where people are dancing and, and hanging out together. So the I'm sure the technical knowledge piece will get better and better with every passing month. People will figure things out, faculty and students. And also, one has to keep in mind that not everybody may have access to the best quality bandwidth at home. But all these things I'm sure will get figured out over time. People will adapt. But the personal growth, the personal sort of learning experience is going to be very, very hard to replicate online, is my view. And a lot of learning happens there as well.
Of course. The night, I used to remember the libraries used to be crowded till 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and the night canteens open, and a lot of discussions and case studies happening 24 hours a day. So these are the excitement things that Hitesh is talking about. And I keep telling students, because most look at an MBA program just like any other graduate program. It's a 2-year program, it's a 3-year program. But actually, what you create is a lifetime bonds. Just look at Hitesh and me. We go back 25 years. And I go back to many, and we are all on WhatsApp 24 hours a day, interacting, sharing thoughts and ideas. And I say, and much, much more. It's not just limited to friends, it's families. And I know Hitesh family, Hitesh knows our family, and so much more. So it is a much, much deeper bonding that emerges on the campus. I'm sure the institutions will open, when the worst case scenario is August. And by the time institutions and whole country or the whole world will know how to manage, even if COVID exists, and how to manage, and institutions would perhaps work on those things and make it happen. And I'm sure by July, as Rishi is saying, the students will be coming, if not maybe a week or two behind, but I think we all will be on the campus. But having said that, couple of thoughts that, this is for both of you, couple of thoughts that emerging among all the discussions that is happening, because today also I saw a poll happening in multiple institutional groups saying that I have got an admission in an institution that I liked, I want to go and join. I got it, but I'm thinking whether it's the right time to go and join. Is the economy perhaps not good? Should I stay back? Some of the institutions, I think even Ahmedabad is offering perhaps a deferred admission. So Rishi, what kind of decisions would be right, or what would you advise a child, a student, young student working? There are people who are working, they're saying, I am already making 9-10 lakhs per annum. What will happen to the economy after 2 years investing? Will I get a 7 lakh or will I get a 12 lakh, 14 lakh? At least my 9-10 lakhs will be saved. So these are the thoughts that they have. Rishi, your comments, your advice.
Yeah, so I think Hitesh already threw some light on that issue. I think while there are, of course, some dark clouds around, there are going to be several opportunities as well. And I think the core thing is that we should be adaptable enough, agile enough to take advantage of the opportunities that come. So as long as one is confident of doing that, I think it's fair enough to join an MBA program this year. By all reasonable expectations, the economy should be returning to normal in 2 years from now. So I think this is a as good a time as any to join an MBA program. Yes, there may be some short-term dislocations this year. For example, there may be delays in starting. There may be online courses perhaps for a couple of months at the beginning. Those are likely to be some of the changes that happen this year. But otherwise, I don't see any specific reason why one should not join a program this year, because I think graduating in 2022 should be fairly good bet as far as opportunities, jobs, and so on are concerned. A caution, I think Hitesh already mentioned that they may not be exactly the same jobs as you imagine today. It could very well be a different set of jobs, but you need to be agile and adaptable enough to take advantage of those new openings.
Hitesh, coming to you, comment on that, and also throw light on what kind of perhaps additional, apart from getting into a business school, are there additional courses, things that they could do to fortify themselves or to make sure they're at the cutting edge of things when the things emerge in a year or two? What do you advise to these students?
So, see, people who are entering now, business school now will graduate 2 years from now. So I'm very optimistic that 2 years from now we'll be in a much, much better place than we are now. Things will be back to normal. If anything, things could be growing faster than they were growing till last year, because companies and countries are throwing so much sort of money at the problem on hand that who knows, what will happen 2 years from now. So I don't see, a problem. In fact, if you fortify yourself with the right skills and if you get the right education in this period, it could hold you in very good stead. Like we discussed, things are changing pretty rapidly around us. So whether you go to business school or whether you go to or you don't, you need to sort of acquire the new skills which are required, which are going to be required in the years to come. Like I said, the world is becoming even more digital as we speak, and this actually COVID crisis is only acting like a catalyst, and accelerating that shift to digital. I'll give you an example. Companies are already doing video interviews, right? I mean, they used to do video interviews every now and then, but now they become so good at doing video interviewing that I think in the future they'll just do video interviews. We run a site called 99 Acres, where business came to a halt because of the lockdown. Because you don't normally buy a house without seeing the house, right? And even if you want to rent a house, you want to check it out. But today we are enabling online site visits. So there are sort of landlords who go to the house, they shoot a video, they sort of take you through their house, and it's broadcast online, and you almost get the same experience. So if anything, more and more stuff is going to move online, more and more good stuff is going to go digital. Data science, machine learning, AI are here to stay, or digital companies are sitting on tons of data. All of them are sitting on tons of data, and they can do a lot with their data. We need people with the right skills to work on that data. If whether you're going to business school or not, I think you should be utilizing this period to acquire these skills, the digital skills, because they're going to be just like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, PPTs and Excels, and without them you could not sort of do much in life. Going forward, I think if you're not digitally savvy and if you don't know how to sort of do some of these things, you're going to fall behind. So it's important that this time is not wasted, and students and use this time to acquire the skills which will be in demand going forward. I think business school is still a very good investment. All these companies where what you're taught is how to manage and grow businesses. Functions like sales, marketing, finance, HR, management are not going out of fashion. I mean, they will be required irrespective of whichever industry you are in. So today one industry may be a sunshine industry, tomorrow something else will be a sunrise industry or whatever. But in every business you need to grow your business, you need to manage your business, you need to service your customers, you need to build new products, you need to market them, and that is what is taught in business school. And this is going to be required irrespective of what happens. So I think it's still a good investment. Now, where things could be a little dicey is, let's say, if you're signing up for a 1-year program, where if it looks like 9 months out of 1 year is going to be online and not offline, then you might want to think twice. But if it looks like it's going to be just 2, 3, 4 month period, and then things will go back to normal from a campus life standpoint, then I think it's still worth, even a 1-year program is still worth it.
Thank you. Thank you. Rishi, looking at the classes opening by end July or first week of August that you spoke about, what do you advise the new coming batches to work upon? Because they still have solid 2.5 months. What is it that you would like when they come, they can take off? Because earlier I know that the IIMs used to call students early for those who are weak in mathematics and quant, they used to call early, and some for, some of these statistical courses and so on and so forth. What do you advise strongly for all those students to work upon in these next 6 to 8 weeks so that when they come, they are highly productive and effective?
Well, first of all, I must mention that, the prep program, which we do hold for students who have some weaknesses in their background, the prep program will be held anyway. So I think it's, if the classes for first year are scheduled in beginning of August, then prep program will be something in the middle of July. And just to clarify once again, all these are at this point of time could possibly be online, because as long as there are any risks involved, we won't be bringing people to the classroom. So whether it's online or physical is something only time will tell. Well, I think as far as preparation is concerned, I think there are a few areas which are always helpful. One is, of course, if you're weak in quant, that's certainly something which can be a handicap in an MBA program. So that's certainly an area worth brushing up. Some students, particularly engineers, find that some familiarity with accounting is helpful, because accounting courses can move pretty fast on campus. The third area where, it never hurts to be better prepared is in terms of communication and language skills. So once again, if you're weak in those areas, it certainly helps to work on that a bit before you come to IIM, because as all of you guys know, once the IIM academic year starts, you have very little time to attend to any gaps which you may have in your past experience and expertise. So it definitely makes sense to fill those gaps before you come to campus, and quant and communication in particular are two areas I would focus on.
So before we move ahead, I have one question, Rishi. The COVID has forced us to look at quite a few things. Perhaps quite a few things have been long overdue in academic institutions. The transformation that should have happened long time ago, and it has got deferred, and COVID now really hit hard, and some of the things you start doing. Are there any certain things which you feel that will now get institutionalized and that would be really good for forward going ahead? Are there any such things that that are happening in terms of transformational things as a business school?
Well, I think this varies a lot from one school to another. By and large, in the IIM system, we are quite sensitive to changes that are happening around. And particularly in terms of curriculum, changes do happen on a regular basis. I think what you're hinting at, if I guess, is really on the technological front. It's probably true that we have not been at the cutting edge of technology, but over the years, I think even there, we have been improving our technological capabilities. Particularly uses of simulations, games, and so on has become quite common in most institutes and in IIM Bangalore as well. You probably know that IMB is the leader in MOOCs. So thanks to our MOOCs presence, we also have a lot of course material which is already recorded and can be used to supplement classroom teaching. I think we have more than 50 MOOCs courses at this point of time. So as one of the leaders in that area, we are already reasonably well prepared to use technology in the classroom. I think where the challenge is perhaps is in integrating all of this together in a good way. For example, I think in an ideal world, maybe we need to look at each course and see, which part of it is well delivered by MOOCs, which part of it could be in synchronous online, and which part of it benefits the maximum from classroom discussion and learning. And then courses perhaps need to be structured accordingly. We've had the luxury of doing almost everything in the class, and maybe now COVID is putting a little pressure on us to look at what is the optimum mix of these different media. I think that's a good thing. But I would say that in spite of that, we have been quite sensitive to some of these things even earlier, and COVID has just given a bit of impetus to that.
One more question that students are asking, Rishi, is if in case the first term completely becomes online, because if it goes to beyond August or September, then perhaps the whole term will end up being online. So do the business schools, including IIMs, are looking at any concessions on the fees front, any discussions that have happened? Is there such a possibility? That's a question coming up from the student.
At the present point of time, I think that's quite unlikely, because as far as the institute is concerned, even if we offer online courses, we would be using, of course, the same faculty who would be teaching in the regular classroom. These faculty would be spending equal, perhaps maybe even more time teaching online, because we'll have to provide maybe discussion forums and other online methods to supplement what's happening in the classroom. So at the present point of time, I don't see any significant concessions likely in the event of online teaching. Of course, if there are some costs which we are not incurring, for example, if there's an element of hostel and food and so on, maybe those elements, there might be some possibility of removing or reducing them. But from the core academic part, I can't see any likelihood that there will be a reduction in cost.
Thank you. Thank you. Hitesh, some of the questions are being asked is, do you really advise us if it is not IIMs and the top tier 1 colleges? If you look at tier 3, tier 4 colleges, I could not make it this year, but I got from the lower ranks. Do you really advise me to join, or you take a break and give the cat because of the economic scenario and jobs and so on and so forth? You try it again and get to the best institutions. What do you say looking at the job scenario and the institutions?
Yeah, so, that's the nature of the beast. When going gets tough, people are there is always a flight to quality. And so if the economy is booming, even if you go to a 100th ranked institution, you're likely to get placed. But if you have a slowdown, then companies also cut down on their hiring requirements, and they tend to then focus on the top institutions when it comes to hiring. So you're more likely to get placed, if you go to a good institute, especially if there is a slowdown. And there is one more thing which I would like to say, that like, and I said, like I alluded to it earlier. There is a lot of things are changing on the edtech front. So we are ourselves investors in one or two edtech companies, and what is available online today is very, very different from what was available online 5 years ago from an education standpoint. The best of universities are offering a lot of courses online. A lot of new startups have set up shop, and they are trying to make a difference. And some of the courses they're offering are not bad at all. So the quality of material available and the quality of education courses available online is improving as we speak with every passing day. And what will also happen over time is that companies today, will start respecting and these courses as well. So even the government of India I think the latest policy, they said a lot of universities will be allowed to offer online degrees and so on and so forth. So the world of higher education is changing rapidly. And I think in the new world, education institutions who don't have good faculty and who don't provide a great education experience on campus are likely to lose out. There is bound to be consolidation. There is bound to be a flight to quality institutes. Like I said, nothing prevents an IIM Bangalore from offering, its courses to, thousands of students online. And, so new models will emerge with time. And in a scenario like this, if you have a stable job, I would not recommend that you sort of quit your job and join and do a degree from a tier 3 or a tier 4 institute. I would stick to quality institutions. And if you don't make it this time, you can try again, no problem. No point in just doing something for the sake of getting a degree. Go for it only if it helps you upgrade your skills, and if you learn in the process.
So it's like in continuity, because Hitesh, you are talking about it, and I'll come to Rishi. This now brings to the other dimension in terms of education, people looking at next year or next year. There could be many models that may be emerging. Perhaps it could be multiple universities. You pick and choose courses from multiple universities and put the bouquet together. And perhaps one of the universities says, okay, I will give you a degree. And if the technology online is really good, then would you advise people looking at 20 or 2020 or 2021 to look at such models to emerge, or look at GMAT and CAT again? So these are some questions people with work experience are asking.
So I think there are two parts to it. See, if you want a high quality management education, I think the IIM still are. I mean, it's far ahead of the rest. So there is no. And like I said, it's not just the online sort of. It's not just the teaching. It's also the on-campus experience which they provide, the networks you build, the connections you establish with faculty, the stuff the friendships you make, and so on and so forth. So I don't think anything comes close to that. And the IIMs, of course, provide great education as well. At least the top IIMs do. But at the same time, what is happening in the world around us is that things are changing pretty rapidly, and stuff which we don't even know of today could become very important in 5 years. And therefore, I think the learning model is also changing. Professionals need to continuously sort of upgrade their skills. They need to sort of learn how to learn, and they should not assume or believe that once they're out of college, that's it. And that's where I think online in the beginning is going to be very helpful, because there's a lot of stuff available online. And there is stuff available online which is not even taught anywhere, by the way, because like I said, so many things are evolving so quickly that even before they make it to the curriculum of some of the established institutes, they're often available online, right, from some international provider or from some digital sort of startup and so on, or from some expert somewhere, right? So I think there are two things here. One is the learning mindset. I think that has to be a continuous sort of learning sort of mindset. Okay, listen, we need to learn all the time, and there is a lot of stuff which is available online which you can learn from, and that you will have to, even if you start working after your IIM degree, I think you should continue. Professionals should continue to sort of upgrade their skills online. But I think the management experience degree which the IIMs provide, the overall experience, the overall product offering is still far superior to anything which is available online. So if you get a chance to go to an IIM, I think go for it.
Thank you, Hitesh. Rishikesh, any comments on this emerging models of education online and people with work experience gravitate towards executive MBA and distance MBA? And is the new forms of these technology-driven MBAs are going to be of immense value, especially in this context?
I think one should be able to distinguish between different types of disciplines and also different kinds of educational experiences. I mean, let's just for a moment take a brief diversion to engineering and undergraduate education. There we're already seeing important differences happening at some levels. For example, many Indian IT companies are now saying we'll not go to campus anymore. We'll give everybody a test or a challenge, and whoever qualifies on the test or challenge, we are willing to take them. We don't care so much about where you got your degree from. Companies like Google and others are also doing something similar. They're in fact going one step further and sometimes saying we don't even care if you have a degree or not. If you can code well enough for this really challenging problem, then you're good enough to come and work for us. But that's largely in the area of what you might call narrow technical skills. Now, when you come to something like management, which is, I think, quite different. I mean, there are many aspects to management. Some of it is very explicit, some of it is tacit. It's a combination of knowledge, skills, attitude, etc. As Hitesh has said several times, it's all about networks and relationships and many other things. So I think management education is a little different from engineering in that respect. And therefore, you are unlikely to see the MBA degree or a management qualification becoming irrelevant in a big hurry. That's, I think, the first core point I would like to make. Secondly, the other question you raised about executive MBA, distance MBA, and so on, I think it has quite a lot to do with what's your starting point. Now, if you've got a lot of experience, you've been working for several years, you've learned a lot experientially as well, and now you're looking for some of those frameworks or approaches which can help you distill what you've learned experientially. That's usually the situation where executive MBA, or there are a lot of these MBAs which don't run at a stretch. They have a few days spread over a couple of years, and in between you do projects and things like that. Those work very well for people who have a significant amount of experience. But if you're a youngster and you've just done your undergraduate degree, and maybe like most of our students, you have a couple of years experience working in a IT company or something like that, you really don't have that exposure to management. You don't have enough experience that you can learn from that experience. So then a full-time classroom, campus-based MBA at a good institution is extremely helpful or beneficial to you. Of course, there are some people who are a little bit in between. Maybe you're 5 years out of your undergraduate degree. You've got picked up some good experience. You're slowly coming to the stage where you're moving into a managerial role. So our 1 year MBAs are kind of designed for that. But the 1 year MBA is really, in many ways, just an accelerated version of the 2 year MBA, designed for people who have more experience and therefore whose opportunity cost is much higher. But I think you need to understand clearly which bucket you fall in and then choose accordingly.
Before I come to one of the final questions, Rishi, I've got this question coming up from now students who are looking at CAT 2020 and CAT 2021. One of the questions they're asking is, do you think CAT 2020 will be affected because of COVID? Because most of the institutions' entrance exams, not board exams, entrance exams, university exams, all are affected. Do you see CAT 2020 getting affected? Will that be postponed, or is there a possibility of discussions or going online from home exam sort of a thing? So this is one question that has come up.
At present, I don't think there's any reason why CAT 2020 should be postponed. Most academic institutions are anyway now trying to catch up with their schedule and so on. So it's quite premature. At least at this point of time, I'm not aware of any discussion about rescheduling CAT 2020. Would the format of the exam change? Can it be taken from home? I'm not sure we are quite ready for that. At least that's my personal opinion. While it's true there is a lot of AI and other new tools to do proctoring of exams while you take them at home, I don't think we are quite ready for that. We certainly don't know, or we're not familiar with what ingenuity students will display in finding ways around those methods. So at least my guess at this point of time is that's unlikely to happen.
So Rishi, by the way, APs are happening online. For the US, they moved to online.
Yeah, it's possible, but that's what I said. India and the ingenuity of our people is something. I think we would be very cautious about that. I'm not saying we'll not do it. I'm not saying we'll never do it. We might very well do it, but I think we'll be cautious before we jump into that.
That's true. Srini, you're on mute.
Friends, I almost have asked all the questions that you have pumped into chat boxes We have last 5-6 minutes, but I would like to ask one very. This is a question that I should have asked earlier. I deferred it towards the end. Um, Looking at the way the changes are happening in the external world, microeconomy, and the kind of industries, the transitions are happening, the technology, as for example, mobile eliminated almost 100, smartphone has eliminated almost 100 different industries. So these kind of things emerging. So the the industries and the world is looking for leadership of a particular kind or some traits that could be of great value looking ahead. So I will first throw it to Rishi and then I'll come to Hitesh on this. So what are the things that you feel if we are looking at leaders emerging from these business schools, and many of them here, these youngsters, 23, 24-year-old, in the next 7, 8, 10 years, what kind of traits do you see they need to work upon, inculcate to be at the forefront of this transformation and transition?
There are a few which I think are particularly important. One, I think Hitesh already mentioned, and that is the importance of being comfortable in the digital domain. This is going to be particularly important for leaders. I just clarify that a little further by saying the understanding of data analytics and how to use data constructively for decision making, for designing products, for meeting the needs of customers, that's clearly going to be very important. So your ability to integrate data analytics skills with other more traditional managerial skills will be, in my view, quite important for successful leaders. A second important quality you will require is the willingness to experiment. Traditionally, in companies, the costs of experimentation were very high, but today in the digital world, the costs of experimentation are much lower. Many companies now expect people to do lots of digital experiments. I'm sure that's true in Naukri and in the other companies Hitesh is associated with. So you have to be able to design experiments, run them quickly. I mean, for example, companies like whether it be even our Zomato or Uber or anybody, they're all doing that all the time, right? They're just trying to figure out new customer needs, new ways of meeting those needs. So your ability to design experiments, roll them out online digitally, and then learn from those experiments and redesign your products, services, etc. That's another skill which I would believe would be extremely important. So these are the two, these main skills I see at this point of time, which are required in addition to a lot of the traditional attributes that successful managers and leaders need.
Hitesh, could you comment on this? Looking ahead, next 5, 7, 10 years, what are the kind of skill sets these youngsters should try to inculcate to be at the forefront of the leadership roles that the world will throw at them?
Like Rishi said, I think leaders of tomorrow need to be comfortable with technology and all the changes that are taking place around us. We are moving to we are moving into the big data world. We are moving into a more digital world. So if you are scared of technology, you're going to have a problem. If you're going to be scared of data, you're going to have a problem. Besides this, increasingly, what we are seeing in our company, at least, is that there is no, beyond a point, if it's all about attitude, right? And it's about your willingness to work in teams, your willingness to collaborate with other functions, because you can't work in silo after a while. Everything is changing, so even the traditional structures which have been in place for a long time tend to break down after a while. So as a manager and as a leader, if you are able to work with other people, if you are able to collaborate with other departments, you could be in product, but you need to work with marketing, you need to work with the data science team, you need to work with the engineering team, so I think increasingly these skills are going to become very, very important. And at least what we are seeing in our company is that people who are sort of, who tend to work in a silo, after a while tend to stagnate. So it's important to build the right communication skills. It's important to build the right collaboration skills. It's important to, I think, continuously update yourself, like I mentioned earlier, on what's happening in the world around you. So it's important to be curious, to know, how things are changing and how that could impact my function or my, things are changing very rapidly. What digital marketing and the way the marketing function is evolving, for example, every 2 years you have something new emerging. So if you don't sort of invest in learning what's happening, and if you're not curious about the changes that are taking place, you could fall very quickly, you could fall behind. So these are things which I think are going to matter a lot in times to come. I know, and by the way, I'm fascinated. I've been on several juries, and even at the school level today, there's high quality work happening because people are just looking up, stuff on Google, and stuff we could not have imagined is now available online. And there is a lot you can do if you are curious, and if there is a desire to sort of learn, and there is a desire to figure out how things work. And I think this is going to become even more valuable in times to come because, like I said, we are moving into a world where there's going to be a lot of disruption.
There are a couple of questions, very interesting ones in terms of your experience with the 5-year MBA at Indore and what you're carrying from there, and do you see 5-year MBA emerging at IIM Bangalore too? So that's a very interesting question, I think.
Yeah, so the experience with the 5-year program at Indore has overall been positive. As many of you might know, it is structured as a 3-year foundation plus a 2-year of MBA. So the 2 years of MBA are done along with the PGP students at IIM Indore. The 3 years foundation focuses on what we believe are the foundation subjects of management, which is economics, statistics, psychology, sociology, and mathematics. And so essentially the first 3 years build a good foundation. And then of course in the 4th and 5th year, students do the MBA courses. So that worked pretty well in Indore, and I think the program has been successful. Are we going to replicate that in Bangalore? To be honest, the answer is I don't know. Creating the undergraduate course involves significant investments in faculty, in infrastructure, and actually in just understanding how to teach and manage undergraduate students, which is quite different from how you relate to students at the postgraduate level. So Indore went through a pretty steep learning curve to address those issues. Many of the other IIMs are not sure that they want to go through those challenges. I think many IIMs, there's a belief that you're better off just focusing on what you already do well, which is running good MBA programs. So at this point of time, I don't have an answer to that question. Will IIMB do it, not do it? I don't know.
We're almost there. Any advice to the youth looking into the next 5, 7, 8, 10 years? Your last comment, Hitesh, anything you would like to share?
No, I want to say, see, we are living through a very difficult time. It's a very difficult situation. But I've been, like you said, working for almost 25 years now. And we've seen some crisis in the past. 2008, people thought the world was going to end. 2001, 2000 dot-com crash. We were a dot-com, we had just got funded at that time. People thought the world was going to end. Then, there was 9/11 after that, just soon after that as well. And in 2008, it was terrible, right? Our business actually went from, we were growing at maybe 35, 40%, and we went to minus 25% for like 3 quarters, all right? So that's how serious even that crisis was. But what I've seen in the past is that, again, every crisis is very different, that, normally India is still a growing country. There is a long way to go. And nothing in India, no slowdown in India has lasted for more than 3 or 4 quarters till now, right? And this is probably the worst we've ever seen. So I'm still very optimistic and hopeful that we will bounce back. Of course, the next 6 months or so could be, or 3 or 4 months could be very, very tough for all of us, right? But I'm sure we'll bounce back, and there'll be a lot of opportunities to do a lot of things once we bounce back, and therefore we should all be hopeful and optimistic. This too will pass.
Rishi, your closing remarks.
I think I mentioned this earlier as well. I think agility, adaptability, and flexibility are key to this. I think Hitesh has been multiple times during this conversation, he's been referring to ups and downs. So you need to be able to ride those ups and downs. And I think the way you can ride those ups and downs, one part which he, I think, mentioned was, of course, attitude, which is very important. Second part is, of course, understanding some of the current things like digital and data and all that stuff. But the other part is just the way you look at things. I think it's all about your ability to keep tracking these new opportunities, to prepare yourself to take advantage of them. You can't afford to be static, rigid, saying this is the only thing I will do. I won't do anything else. This is the only course I am interested. I mean, just all those rigidities, I think, could pose a challenge. Because when the world is changing so fast, the only way you can keep up is if you're also flexible and adaptable. So that's where I would put my money if I were any of the youngsters of today. You have to keep pace or keep following what's going on and adapting your own personal profile and skill portfolio to adapt to those changes.
I always felt, I keep telling the youngsters, there are three things. Even I struggle on these three fronts. Number one is L, that is lifelong learner. As Hitesh said, be curious, eager to learn, dismantle yourself, unlearn and learn. This is a process that we can't afford not to lose. Second, I feel is courage to fail. It's very, very important. The fail is actually FAIL is first attempt in learning. That's what FAIL I mean. So courage to keep pushing the boundaries. Don't worry about failure because the growth happens beyond those boundaries. Last but not the least, that both of you said in terms of humility, that's the biggest weapon that you can have to create teams and build teams that can go and conquer the world. So it's been pleasure interacting with you, Rishi and Hitesh. A lot I have gained out of this interaction. I'm sure the youth, sure those who are learners would have bundled quite a lot of stuff from here on their journey. It's a pleasure having you, both of you here. Thankfully, 1.5 hours passed by without much of technology intervention. So thank you very much. It's been pleasure. Looking forward to hopefully faster recovery in each of our fronts, and soon we meet. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot on behalf of everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Srini. Thank you, Hitesh. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rishi.
Thanks, Rishi. Thanks, Hitesh. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, all students. Thanks, all listeners. It's been pleasure having you all. Hopefully, all your questions have been answered because almost all the questions that have come my way on to the chat panel, I have asked every question. Hopefully, all of us are happy and looking forward to best wishes for your journey, onward journey. Write back to us. You can write back to me also, Srini@careerlauncher.com. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Activate. Hello. Hello. Hello.